We've got our jetpacks on, our laser rifles loaded, and we're taking to the skies. That either means we're about to die hot, violent, and completely unnecessary deaths, or we're playing Mania Daiginjou on this episode of Doki Doki Game Club. Hello and welcome to Doki Doki Game Club, a retro video game podcast. I am your host, Brandon Fincher, and joining me today are the high-flying Blaster Boys who put the man in Mania. Frank Martin.
Thank you.
Brian Grogan.
Hiya.
And Mr. Joseph Lester.
Roger, Roger.
As always on Doki Doki Game Club, we each take a turn choosing a particular title from video game history, and we announce the selection online so everyone can play along at home. From there, we have 2 weeks to spend with the title, at which point we reconvene for a deep dive into the nuts and bolts of the game. This episode's selection was made by yours truly, and the title, once again, is Mania Daiginjou for the Sega Mega Drive. Mania Daiginjou was released to Japanese and South Korean audiences in 1993 by publisher and developer Vic Tokai. The second installment in the Mania series, the game has players once again assuming control of Mania Otori and her partner, Maria Hanada, a pair of freelance combat operatives working for the Japanese military. The first game in the series was released in North America under the title Troubleshooter, but its sequel would never find its way to Western regions. A third installment in the series was conceived for the PlayStation and Saturn and later pitched for the Dreamcast under the title Mania New York, Gankutsuyo. Be sure to check the episode show notes for a link into the HardcoreGaming101.net's article for further info on that. Alright guys, so we're playing this crazy, wacky Mega Drive game, Mania Daiginjou. I guess let's go ahead and start as we do with everyone's personal history for this game, or even, I guess, the first game. I mean, the likelihood of any of you guys knowing about this would really surprise me if you did. But with Troubleshooter, has anyone even heard of that before?
I haven't.
Nope. I've heard the name, but it's definitely nothing that I've popped in. And that was only because my friend Pat was a huge shoot 'em up dude, so he kind of referenced every game of that period.
Yeah. You know, I did a little bit of research, as I'm wont to do with this show, and I looked up some stuff trying to get a handle on just how popular the game was, at least for Troubleshooter here in America. And GamePro, as some of you old men listeners might be aware, a longtime magazine for video games, gave Troubleshooter a perfect score.
Wow.
Like a complete 25 out of 25. And in the article, the guy, he goes bonkers for it. So I found it really strange that this game was so at least popular as far as GamePro was concerned, or at least the journalist who wrote the article. But yeah, I don't recall ever seeing art for it, but the box art for Troubleshooter and just the overall aesthetic for the game is so reminiscent of a lot of what was happening in anime at the time.
Yeah.
The whole, so maybe we can get into that a little more later. But I don't know. It was just strange that this one kind of slipped up, or slipped under the radar. But I think. I have a note here. Some interesting things regarding the possibility on why we never got the sequel to this.
Okay.
In addition to Troubleshooter and just not doing super well, I found an article over on GameSpot UK, and the reviewer points out that in the original Troubleshooter, there were several edits made from the Japanese version into the American version that removed a lot of sort of Japan-centric details to make the game more palatable to Western audiences.
So they put in hamburgers, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows what they threw in? I don't know. I haven't played the original one yet, but yeah, this writer who just goes under the handle Panzer's Y, he goes on to propose that Battlemania 2, since it's packed with even more stuff like that, that
unextractable.
Yeah, I mean, it just became to it seems to be at least that the obstacle of trying to remove all of that stuff for a more generalized audience must have just been
almost defiantly so. Like when you say added more stuff, like I haven't played the first one, but just I'm sure we'll talk more about it. But Stage 3 alone is just like so Japanese.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
it's
absolutely.
funny. It's funny because I mean every game had that like Asian level, right? Like at some point.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's the like little nuances like they're eating curry and like rice curry and stuff like that. So I don't know. I can kind of see it that they were just like it's too much of a hassle, I guess.
No, totally. Well, with history out of the way, I say we get around to Back of the Box. We, the miraculous troubleshooters, completely slaughter the little kitties. Blood gushing, flesh ripping slaughter. And this newly arrived huge street brawler full of action and turmoil. Okay, so I've had everyone else do an elevator pitch, and since it's my turn, I'll go ahead and do the same. And, in a nutshell, I've written here in my notes that Battlemania Daiginjou is a fun-loving, anime-inspired, horizontal shoot-'em-up set in a high-tech metropolis.
Yeah.
That does a pretty good job of
nails
summarizing it. Yeah. So, we kind of got started on the cultural differences, and since we tend to like to get started by discussing the aesthetic of the game, I thought we might kick off with mentioning the anime and like talking a little bit more about that. I mean, I know that's kind of your bag. I mean, most of you guys have had at least some sort of old school experience with.
I may have watched an anime or two.
Yeah, I think so.
Watched a couple cartoons.
So when playing this game, a couple of animes that come to mind, Project Echo.
That's exactly what I was going to name. No joke.
Got that written
I
down.
figured it's very obvious.
Yeah.
And then the other one, Dominion Tank Police.
Yeah, I can see that.
Which I don't have my knowledge of old anime is pretty limited, but yeah, like that Project Echo in particular just seemed really, really, in sync with this.
I was going to go with Dirty Pair as well.
Dirty Pair, for sure.
Oh, yeah, geez. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you guys would be better suited to talk about some of this. But was there like a thing in anime to have the character dynamic that you get with Mania and
Absolutely.
Maria?
Yeah. I even think it comes down to like Japanese comedy. Like there's like manzai and stuff like that. That's very similar to this. Yeah, it's like
because even when you got guys like Beat, right, like Beat Takeshi, and then his partner, and even like the sort of variety TV shows,
exactly,
I think of like pop culture stuff where they would have like the straight guy and the goofy guy.
That's kind of how the cutscenes played out too, in some ways,
Yeah.
It's always super manzai to me, like the dumb blonde girl and like the nerdy kind of free will kind of. I guess she's blue haired but dark haired girl.
It's always the dark-haired girl that's the more the demure one.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, so let's maybe move away from anime then, and somebody want to give me a rundown on what the aesthetics for this game is. I mean, obviously, super anime inspired with the cutscenes, but well, I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on the appearance of this
it's
game?
It's a gritty, gnarly Mega Drive game, like through and through, and just
through and through.
I mean, but the thing is, it's very colorful too. So it kind of mixes those worlds where you have like there'll be areas that are Alien Crush-esque, just like where it's like the crazy backgrounds and weird creatures flying around, but it's also like I don't know. It reminds me of a mix of like good shooters from that era and the really bad, not gameplay wise, but just like aesthetically speaking. There are some things like certain enemies where you're like, oh, that's kind of like a whatever throwaway enemy, but like I don't know. It just really seemed so Sega to me in its design, and like from the backgrounds to the characters, the ridiculously big main character sprites.
And just awesome. Like I love those character sprites. Man. Like especially when the pair of them, team up and you've got the Maria on the backside and Mania in the front, and kind of the flip flop of that. Just a great look. And that you talked about, the blonde versus the brunette, or the dark-haired one or whatever. But man, like it almost seems like their sprites were like designed in tandem. Like it wasn't.
For sure.
It doesn't feel tacked on. Like the everything just feels super dialed in, down to like the little details of their laser rifles or whatever. Whatever the rifle.
Yeah, it's somehow really readable.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, like we talk probably later how you can do 8 directional mode. Usually the main character can't turn around, but they even animated her hair differently when she does turn around. Like that's not even the main.
It hangs
mode
over
of the
her
game.
face in a different way.
Yeah, and it's just like it just seems to me overall like it's like they hit a huge art team. It's like it's mainly like driven by that. Yeah.
And you, if you compare, you talking about the art team. I mean, I don't know how well the first one did in Japan, but it must have done well enough for them to throw significantly more money at it. Because, as Frank can attest, we chatted about it briefly, and like the aesthetics and like the gameplay in general from part one, even though I haven't played it, looks much more primitive, and it was only within a year or so between the two coming out. So
that's what I was going to mention. I was going to say, like, because you pitched the idea, should we do the first game or the second game? And then I looked at screenshots of the both, and I was like, number 2 for sure, because the first one looked like garbage. Well, not garbage, but it just didn't look as sophisticated.
Well, it's kind of one of those ideas of, where if you don't have time to implement something and cool ideas you have, then you're like, well, we'll have to save it for the sequel. And that seems like what they did with this.
Right.
Yeah, very well could be. Yeah, it's quite possible. Speaking of originals and sequels, I thought I would go ahead and take a chance to mention like the crazy plot of this game, just so people kind of have a good idea of what's going on.
Are you saying the back of the box didn't cover all that?
Apparently not. I don't know. Hopefully everybody got a kick out of that. But no, to understand like the story of this game, I guess. So I really don't know exactly what happens in part one, but it ultimately concludes with them defeating the big bad, whatever. His name, I found like 2 sources. So if you're playing Troubleshooter and, you're listening to this and you want to play the Western version, the character's name in Troubleshooter was Blackball. And in the, I guess in the Japanese version, the character was called Morgstein.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially, he dies in the first one, and some new cabal of people bring him back from the dead, a la Dracula and Castlevania. And when he gets back, he decides that he wants to, if I'm remembering this correctly, I guess capture Mania, kill her, put her brain in a battle tank, and use the battle tank to destroy Heisei, what's the word here? Heisei Babylon.
Heisei Babylon, right.
Yeah. Heisei, which I had to look that up.
It's like the era of Japan.
Yeah. It's like the modern era, or at least at the time that the game came out. So the game is set in this sort of Babylon, the Tokyo office of modern Babylon. And this guy comes back from the dead, and he looks very kind of Dracula-esque. And he's got like a cape, or like kind of looks like a wizard, like a Final Fantasy wizard battle.
He looks really cool.
Yeah,
really cool. He looks awesome. And so that's the plot. And he just goes around wrecking stuff. And Mania and Maria are playing catch up from level to level. There's some stage bosses that appear to be working for him, but you really don't get a lot of plot from that. But yeah, God, the putting her brain, because she's so chaotic after the events of the first one, like putting her brain in a battle tank.
It's a brilliant plan.
You can't see this, listener, because but I never realized this isn't very good radio. But I'm kissing my finger.
Oh yeah, I gathered that. I think our listeners did too.
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone has anything else to talk about in regards to the plot, because that's basically it.
No, I think that covers it for sure, because it's pretty zany.
So we would be remiss with talking about like the presentation of this game, not to mention the audio. The music is fantastic. And I don't know if everyone else has as strong feelings as I do.
Oh man,
about this.
it's real
Feel
good.
free to chime in. But I went from, I'm not the world's biggest Sega Genesis fan. I don't know. There's lots of Sega games that I like, but just in general. But man, like this soundtrack is phenomenal. And I would say after the end of playing this game that this has become my favorite Sega Genesis soundtrack. And that's period. Full stop. And yeah, I don't know. Brian, Frank, you guys have any thoughts on the music to it?
Oh, I love it. It's funny because I had heard this soundtrack way before I ever played the game. I never even looked it up. Oh, really? Yeah. I go on like VGM Rips or what was that other website that there's another website.
So far?
No, let me just
KH Insider?
No.
KH Insider has like lots of soundtracks, yeah.
It's called Game Music Appreciation.
Okay. Game Music Appreciation.
Yeah. Is that weird like
it's like a Chrome exclusive website that you need.
Yeah. Yep.
Chrome.
Yeah, so I spend most of my days listening to just random soundtracks while I'm working, and I've been doing this for 5-6 years now, and it would always come on random, and I was like, this is so good. And
reminds me of like Thunder Force or something, like in the way it just kind of chugs and but less metal, obviously.
Less metal, but less metal, but still like hard rocking driving beats.
Yeah, like real dynamically composed.
Way more melodic too, right? Than like. It's so good. Yeah, it's
when I think of stuff like Thunder Force, like it's and like Lords of
Thunder is the one specifically I was thinking of. Yeah.
Like that's good. Like I mean, I like metal, in general. So like I like hearing that, but I don't know, man. Something about this, like it really mixes all the qualities I like. Who pointed it out? Norn Rad, I think, maybe pointed out in some online stuff. Matt Creamer, soundtrack composer, a guy who certainly knows his chiptunes, and he had pointed out that he thought that a lot of the songs, and he picked one in particular, and maybe Frank can put it into this conversation here. But he said this song sounds a lot like Andrew WK, and I hadn't thought about it at the time, but after he said that and I listened to it, I was like, "Oh my god, that is!" I would be surprised if Andrew WK hadn't heard it.
Yeah,
because it is.
Well, he is a big nerd, so it definitely wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, he has a whole Gundam album, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one thing about the soundtrack, while we're still on it, is that it kind of echoes my sentiments about, or just like the feel of the game in general, because it's very, it's not afraid to jump around tonally, and that like the game's very silly, but there's dark moments, there's like scary stuff in it, and then there's just like you can go from in one screen from something really intense and pounding to just like this goofy boss.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's like the whole second level where you're going around in like a town, like metropolis town, and then like the boss shows up, gives you health, and then shows back up and like starts beating the shit out of you. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's probably the thing that I like the most about the soundtrack, because when you take, and this is of course just my opinion, and I'm sure people listening to this are probably going to hate me for it, but like when you take, say, something like Sonic 2, right? Sonic 2's got a bunch of great songs, but for my taste, there's quite a few songs on that soundtrack that I'm not crazy about, and that's kind of just the case with a lot of.
Well, it's front loaded like every Sonic soundtrack. It's front loaded.
Yeah. And so, but with this from start to finish, and it's a bunch of different stuff, and you take them. There's the elements of metal. You've got the just the regular rock songs, like Stage 1, so infectious, and it's got a nice strong. I don't know enough about music theory to really explain myself very clearly when it comes to that, but it's like a nice, strong, positive, upbeat kind of a tone to it, and but it is really efficient on the sound channels that it's using. It's just like two guitars playing the exact same thing in a band. It's kind of how like I think of the music from Stage 1. And for the most part, like for like kind of the intro part, and then like it gets into some more noodly stuff after it does the verse or chorus bit, like the hook.
It's in my head right now.
Yeah. If you've played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it is, I don't know, it's just great. And then you take something. I mean, we can just sit here and make an entire podcast about how great the soundtrack is. But and then you can move to a song like I believe it was the end credits music. I'll point out to Frank what it is, and hopefully he can put it back in here. But it's very like Japanese jazz fusion. Like it has like a strong kind of a T-square vibe about it. I don't know. It just hits all the marks for me. I don't know. I love metal. I love jazz fusion. I don't know. It's got everything there for me. And I can't say enough.
It's a thing of beauty for sure.
Can we talk about the song titles too? Because there's a sound test. All the songs have a
that's a good
title.
point. Excellent.
And it's just great, like Japanesey names: Pick Me Up Boy, Smoking Head, Blue Sky Laundry. We got Brawling Up.
The Blue Sky Laundry, I think, is the one that I'm thinking of.
Like
Blue Sky
Japanese
Laundry
pop,
is the
that
one's that's probably my favorite track. But Brawling Up, Brawing Up. Like, what does that even? What is that supposed to mean?
What does that mean, right?
Right. Also, one of the tracks is Deposit Coins, which is funny because I was like, oh, this is also arcade? It's like, nope.
Nope.
Just
referential. They knew what they were making. You know,
the songs now that you say the titles, like they remind me of the song titles for like anime openings and endings. You know,
it'll
be definitely. Like, Bring up.
Definitely. Well, it's great. So there's one when you finish a level, you get the jingle called "Great Job." And then the last jingle is called "Very Great Job."
That's also kind of like the ratings.
You did the best job.
Like the funny thing is, it's the exact same. I wasn't able to find any difference between the tracks, but there's a separate one for the last.
You know how like in this game you get ratings for each stage. You get like A- or like worse.
Yeah.
But there's also like Ultimate A or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
Ultimate A.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's great. It gives you that sentiment that you actually did something good.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, when I first started playing, it was all like C's.
Ordinary C.
Oh, yeah.
It was B minus, but B minus wasn't like a B minus. It was just a B.
Yeah.
Basically. And then ordinary C. And
well, let's take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we can dive into the mechanics. Okay, so we're back, and I know you guys were eager to kind of move into the mechanics, of which the game has some pretty interesting ones. So, Joseph, did you have anything else you wanted to kind of kick things off with as we get deeper into that?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the mechanics, so, we've established that this is like a shooter, a 2D side-scrolling shooter, and it sometimes changes from like vertical to horizontal depending on the stage, but most of them are horizontal. Yeah. And
I will actually point out, not to cut you off there, but with it being vertical, it's not vertical in the same way
where you're facing up. No, yeah, you're just gliding up or gliding down, but you're still facing left and right.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you choose.
If you choose to. Which brings me to so the main mechanic is you're playing as Mania, and she she can shoot. This is my first impression of the game, and I'm sure it was for a lot of people, is that she can shoot to the right. Okay,
right.
So this is kind of a trouble point for me
and that's default, by the way.
Yeah, this is default, which is
it is default.
And like the thing for me is I generally consider the default options to be the developer's intended way of playing a game, which is why if you go in options you'll see like like sometimes you'll see raise the lives in a game, and not this one specifically, but in certain games, and like, well, I just want to play how they want me to play it because that's how it was like. Theoretically how it was balanced, and how everything was kind of laid out. So I didn't even go into the options, which I should really start doing, but that's kind of a bad habit of mine. I just don't go to the options.
Who knew, though? I mean, so what? That brings us to a good point and something that I'm curious about, and we hadn't discussed off cast. But like, what drove you to the options menu?
You guys did, because
okay,
right.
Exactly. See, I almost feel bad about that because I kind of wish you guys would have like stumbled into there yourself.
But I wouldn't have, because I played the whole game, and after you told me about it, I said, well, I'm on like level 7 already, so I'm not gonna change it now.
Okay.
So I played through the whole game with default options.
Well, I guess so. We're on this topic here. Let me clarify for listeners here. So I'm not very good at video games, as most of you are aware, and I was hitting my head against the wall on this one. I mean, it's tough, man, and you don't have you have 5 continues, 1 life. And
you can take multiple hits.
Hit more than once. Yeah.
You have a health bar, but that's it.
You get a health bar.
And so, I was dying repeatedly on stage 1, and I was like, man, this is a mess. Like, what is going on? And so, I hopped over the menu and started looking around through the options and noticed that, there's a bunch of different stuff. You've got, we talked about Mania and Maria. And so I kind of want to clarify that now that we're on the topic of mechanics, but Maria is essentially, she's Mania's partner, and they're flying around together, and her default position is pointed away. So Mania is pointing in one direction, Mania is in the other, and there's a button on the controller that will allow Maria to flip positions, so the both of you are facing in one direction, and vice versa. So that's pretty cool. But when you get into the menu settings, there's also a heading called drone. And one thing we haven't mentioned, which I thought was actually really cool, was when you start each stage, you get to choose from a list of drones. And the game is
Are you
heavy
serious?
on comedy.
I totally didn't realize that you could choose.
I didn't realize that at first either.
Wow. At no point did you like push up or down during
the
this?
thing is, there's even arrows.
That's incredible.
Yeah, never.
There's arrows.
Okay, so let's clarify that a little bit then for not only our listeners but for you. So you get a little screen at the start of each stage, and you see some stages you see Mania in the corner, a little anime portrait of her, and then in some stages you get Maria, and so she has a little comment about whatever the current given drone selection is. And they all have fun names, like Ben 10 is one, and Chainsaw is another, and so on. And
they all come from different countries.
Yeah, that's right.
France
one's
and
from
India,
France, one's from Germany.
Yeah.
And so, they've all got these cool names, and they are essentially, they fly around, they follow her around like a drone, and they are the item responsible for Mania's super move, like her bomb ability. And depending on which one you've selected, it looks completely different on screen. So I really like that a lot. But back to the menu, one of your options is the behavior of that drone when it's just in standard default mode. So you can have it rotate around you, which was an eyesore and a total mess. I didn't care for that at all. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I didn't try that. No.
Yeah, rotation's a mess. Opposite direction was confusing to me as well, because if you move in one direction, it will change direction and move in the other, but there's a slight delay on it. Like, it's moving autonomously, sort of. Didn't care for that. The correct one, which happens to be the default one, is follow you. And so you got that. So with all that out of the way, the most important thing that you're going to find in that menu system, in my opinion, is the change of directions.
Yeah.
And so the default, as Joseph mentioned, she's always pointing to the right. And if you can imagine this,
but you can still press the button to switch her left. You can still face her to the left.
Can you?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
I'm sorry. I'm wrong.
Yeah,
you can only move Maria to the left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Left
Yeah.
right.
So
Okay,
Maria's
right.
behavior is always the same. Yeah. But with Mania, she always points to the right by default, and you can move her around on the screen. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. A lot of games are played that way. Most shooters are actually played that way. And so I can understand why the default would be that. But you have a second option that's a two-way, and it's left and right, and you can fill in the rest of the blanks yourself. And then the last one is eight-way. And eight-way, in my opinion, is the only way to play this game.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, it's satisfying. It's fun. It adds an element of strategy to how you're playing and rewards you for your strategy with improved controls, in my opinion. And so the eight-way, you point her in direction and you hold down the shooting button, and it will keep her in the last direction that you positioned yourself. But so long as you're shooting, you can continue to move around freely on the screen. So hopefully that you can get an image in your head as you're listening to me say that. I really wish that Pocky and Rocky would have used this. And I don't want to go back to a previous episode and talk about it, but I was like, I had never really played a game that used this control scheme before. I mean, typically there is a strafe button in addition to a shooting button, right?
Yeah.
And this, it doubles down and it does it does them both at double
It's like
duty.
a good compromise between having your own button for it, for strafing.
Exactly.
You know? And I have to say, I said I played through the game with just the default, and it was pretty tough. But I got better. I got better as the game went on, so it wasn't that bad near the end. But I spent for the second stage, I played through that till I memorized it to get through it, like that.
And that's the thing about shmups.
Yeah,
Like
pretty much.
Things appear on the screen, and you have really no chance to
and
react
the
to
stage
them,
will speed up, and something new. And that's the thing about this game. There's a lot of variety, so you have to be always on your toes because you don't know what's coming next.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
The game, speaking of variety, I just wanted to touch on that just a bit briefly. Man, some great enemy designs in this game. Like starting from the get-go, I don't know, I'm just a fan of like modern urban settings with like the added monstrous
Me too.
sort of aesthetic, So like in stage 1, right from the get-go, you get all this weird stuff flying around, and a lot of it's kind of like not particularly amazing, but the spiders that you see them crawling up in the background, you're flying essentially up a skyscraper to fight the boss.
The craziest
in
skyscraper of all time.
Yeah.
It's like massively tall and like it's super crazy. And you see these spiders like in the background, and then like they'll drop on you, and they're so gross and like neon green, and like Joseph talked about how very Sega this game is from that era, and like man, it's a prime example.
Yeah, because those are gross out enemies where when you kill them, their sacks deflate.
Yep, yeah, like they ooze, from like broken orifices, and it's excellent.
There's some of the enemies were yokai actually.
Yeah.
Traditional, like new takes on traditional monsters for sure. Can you think of any ones in particular?
There was the weird umbrella with the one eye.
Oh yeah, sure. On what stage is that? 3?
No, stage 1. He's
really. I'm thinking of
it's the one that like you kill him and he turns into 2, and then you kill him again and he turns into 4, kind of thing.
That's not the stage, like the suburban setting where you're going along the train line?
No, that's stage 1.
Okay, yeah, it's starting to blur together.
But I was going to talk about the big train was a big like Oni demon head on both ends.
And also,
for sure.
that whole third stage, where it was all like inside a temple kind of area.
Yeah, that was cool, with a giant leg that came down out of nowhere. Yeah, I like that a lot. Some great stage stuff. Do you guys have any thoughts? Do you have a particular favorite stage that you went through?
I was going to say, I thought, did you like the basketball robot?
Yes. That was
totally. Yeah, that was fantastic.
For anybody who doesn't know, it's like this big. It looks like a big ball, and he has a head and legs, and then there's like 2 basketball nets on each corner of
the nets come down. He starts shooting hoops.
And then the balls.
It's so random and weird like that, and like like I said, everything about the game is about juggling back and forth between those two aesthetics, like goofy, silly, cartoony, bubblegum anime, and then nightmare.
Like
but it does
horror,
both of them
nightmare.
so well,
Right.
I just really like that.
It does it really well, and there's so many moments that are memorable because of that, and it doesn't seem like random because from the beginning the game doesn't take itself too seriously. So you're kind of expecting these comedic weird moments, and then like one of the bosses is kind of like a claw game machine.
Yeah.
Right.
Boss.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really all over the place in a way that like most shooters aren't. I mean, I know it's funny for us to say, or for me to say that, considering we just talked about Pocky and Rocky in the last episode, which is an unusual shooter in its own right. So they're out there, you can find them and seek them out. But I guess I grew up playing like the standard default ones, that were just spaceship in space.
Yeah.
And you would get the bio enemies, the bio bosses and things that look like, writhing tumors.
But never the twain shall meet.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
But this reminded me of, and I don't know, I didn't really look into exactly the individuals behind this besides the amazing credits that tell you like the quirks of all the developers. But it reminded me a lot of a treasure game, like Dynamite Heady or like mixed with like Gunstar Heroes, and where just the bosses get completely out of, just completely wild with them. Like it's just totally creative, and they kind of throw spaghetti at the wall with them.
Yeah.
And fortunately, in this case, most of the stuff stuck. Yeah. I mean, it could have easily been a failure. I mean, I can think of. Well, actually, I was going to sit here and list off some games that just don't do this as successfully, but that's.
Well, I even think some of the, I know they're really revered, but I even think some of the treasure games kind of flounder in that regard, in that they'll be like kind of like, oh, this is a bit too stupid, this boss. So I actually thought that they did a better job in this game than a lot of the traditional wacky boss games that you play.
Right.
Even like the boss of like it's not a train, it's like a big semi that has Oni face on each end.
It's one of the best parts of the game.
Yeah, was that a train or a semi?
That's
I guess it could have been a semi.
It's a semi because
a tank or a bus or something.
It's a big I think it's a big tanker.
Well, to me,
almost
it looks
like something that would be a Mad Max.
It looks like a semi because there's like the wheels and there's like mice in it.
There's mice inside of it.
Yes,
You're right.
And
they're so good. I love it.
It reminds me of Fury
fun.
Road. You know how they have that Furiosa has that huge tanker in Fury Road. It's kind of like that.
If I'm understanding correctly, based on the sequence of events in that game, that is supposed to be the battle tank that Mania was supposed to have her brain put into.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
If I'm not mistaken. I mean, because you never see anything else. So, like, if he has, that's like the big thing leading to the final boss battle. You literally, for people following along at home, or if you haven't played the game, like this final main stage is broken up into two parts. You've got this massively long weird tank thing that has on either end of it like a face,
like an Oni head or something,
red Oni mask, sort of a face, and all sorts of stuff all along it that's like exploding, projectiles at you. You got the mice in the wheels, you got the whole thing, and
its nose jets out. And it has it
does jet out, and that's its weak spot, right? And then it like retracts back into its head. It's so weird. So you have this weird device, and once you defeat it, you go inside and you go the full length of this thing again from front to back.
Sorry to interrupt, but it reminded me a lot of like the Technodrome inside. I don't know.
Totally. It's got that aesthetic where and that goes back to just how great this game is when it comes to like giving you just a massive variety of flavor, because the inside is super robotic and everything is like metal and it just looks high tech as hell.
Yeah.
And then, but then there's the stage where you're making your way through the suburbs of Japan along a train line and you see houses and sunshine in the bay and I don't know. It's good stuff.
Well, one thing I want to know that I've been thinking of since I started playing the game, and especially since a certain moment in the game, I want to know for each of you guys, like when this game really clicked for you, like when you were really into Mania Daiginjou.
For me, it's first level, first boss when Maria comes out of the skyscraper on a car and kills the boss. I was like, I'm in. That's it. I'm in.
Yeah, and I mean, just like Frank described, she smashes through, and it's cool too because the game does a great job with a callback to that car, because the only way that you're capable of catching up to the Deathmobile that Mania's intended for is to get in that car
and drive,
and like you have to like rip across Tokyo or wherever.
It's like something Lupin would drive, like a little beat up.
Totally, yeah.
It's convertible.
I hadn't thought about that at the time, but and you know how much I love Lupin, so. It's zany. To keep going with Joseph's line of questioning, I think stage one for me is same thing. I think it's weird because I probably spent 30, 40 minutes on stage one dying repeatedly. Yeah. When I first started playing and hadn't messed with the menu system at all. And once I got that figured out and I learned how the 8-way worked, and I have to admit, my first playthrough of this game, and I haven't actually finished it on normal difficulty. I've only played through it on easy. So my first playthrough, even I will tell you, a lot of times when you play easy mode on a game, and I know you guys will, if you have any experience playing easy mode, I don't know, but the easy mode on a game is too easy.
Didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, right. And in most, I don't know, I don't play all games on easy, but like I decided to play this one because I was just like, man, my time is really limited now, and I can't waste like an hour of like beating my head against a wall. So yeah, switched to easy, played it through. Stage 1, once I got the controls down, and I was like, oh, okay, I can make my way all the way to the end boss through the first stage and have no problems. Not really. I mean, there's a little bit of a challenge, but that was the thing. I mean, aesthetics and stuff aside, I really like after you beat the first stage and you've unlocked Maria. So I want to explain that quickly too. There might be some sort of plot connection to Troubleshooter or the first Battle Mania, but
she just says when you're picking a gun that she's sleeping.
Yeah, and I thought that was weird. I just kind of chalked it up to a translation problem.
I think she's just literally at home taking a nap. That's
so they end up. So that apartment that at the top of so they live in the penthouse of this massive skyrise. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. So she's not not there, and she smashes the car out
through it. Yeah,
because this demon is
that makes
outside.
it even better.
Yeah, it lands right on his head. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah,
but they only have 300 yen for snacks.
Yeah, well, you got to pay for those car repairs.
Yeah, I think once the jokes started rolling in, I mean, you get the one from the get go, but like the little between level comedy, I mean, I like that. The look of it all. It wasn't very long. I don't know that I can nail a specific spot. Like Frank did with the car smashing through, even though that's an important one.
It made me, I was playing with headphones on and I went, oh my God. And like out loud. And then my wife was just like, what? I was like, this game is so cool. Like it's all I could say. and then like the cutscene, they're just eating they're eating curry and rice. And then they decide to go to the beach. To follow something, and then all of a sudden Maria has like a bathing suit on, and
they're gonna go hang out at the beach if there's time.
Yeah,
and it's like don't have money for snacks.
And that's just very reminiscent of like Project A-ko and Dirty Pair. It's like they're saving they're saving the world, but they're concerned with these little things they want to do.
Yeah.
Hey, girls just want to have fun, bro.
Exactly.
There you go.
And kill a lot of stuff.
Oh, well, for me, it was like it wasn't right away it wasn't even then. Like I thought that was really cool, but I think I was just kind of trying to wrap my head around playing it. So I wasn't, I think a lot of the initial cool stuff kind of slipped by me until I went for a second playthrough. But I think the third stage, I started to get frustrated and I was like, I don't know if this is really clicking with me. It's kind of, like I said, I wasn't doing 8-way or anything like that. So you can see how it would be really annoying. And then,
but doing that one vertical scroller downward without 8-way, that was a real pain.
Well, let me tell you, it was actually the vertical downward scrolling level, stage 4, that really sold me on the game. And it wasn't just the crazy, kind of almost Contra-like look to some of the enemies. There are a lot of alien heads and stuff like that, and they're like vomiting alien heads, which is great.
Yeah, garbage.
Like Coke cans fell out of them. But a
little bit Splatterhouse.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it was actually that boss was that the basketball boss or no?
I think
so.
At the bottom was basketball.
So
boss,
it was the basketball boss, and then straight into the stage 5 where you're on the car with like the big semi or tank or whatever. Then I was
whatever.
Like, this is like exactly what I love about games. I was like, because I kept playing because I wanted to see what they're gonna do next.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so easy to get tedious with shooters, and that's why the history of them is, you have the arcade games where it's designed to plunk coins into. It's hard as hell, and you're not really expected to sit down and beat it from start to finish. So it's just designed to have a little bit of your time. But when you get to a console one, you should really step up your game.
Yeah.
And these,
because you're not just replicating an experience, which is all that some people want out of an arcade port, or all like a developer wants to make out of an arcade port, is to be like, hey, look, here's a reasonable facsimile of this game that you pumped quarters into. But now, and with an original game, you definitely have to do something better.
It's a bit of a digression, but I think I am maybe more aware at this stage in my life of the problem with that, with taking an arcade experience. I guess as a kid, I just never put too much thought into it, but that is like a serious thing and an unfortunate problem that, really ruins some otherwise great games where it's like, well, I mean, I've got this game at home and you're just making it relentlessly brutal. I don't know,
reason,
just a side thought. Yeah. Okay, well, do you guys have any other thoughts about just general thoughts on the gameplay, or anything?
Did you guys get bamboozled by the downward arrow power up?
No, because I wanted to use it sometimes. Like there's
talk to me about the benefit of that.
I'll tell you,
it speeds you down.
Exactly what it is.
It speeds you down.
Well, but why?
Because
you're never so fast that it's hard to control.
I don't know. I totally disagree, because in shooters, a lot of the times, especially in horizontal shooters, I feel like you can get too many speed ups, and it makes it very sensitive to go up and down. So there's one part in stage 2 where you're kind of zipping through, and there's this worm flying around the screen, and the screen actually gets faster. It gets a little faster. You probably have a couple speed ups at that point, and then right after it, you can dive right into a speed down, and it felt so right to me because the pace of the level slows down with you.
I don't know.
And when I watched some long plays, like they were rocking it, and they collected all the speed downs they could. So
okay.
There must be
By the way,
something to
that's
it.
all that exists for this game are long plays. I saw one speed run, but there's no way to speed run. It's like an auto scroller.
It's not really a speed
Yeah.
run.
No.
Yeah, I think the
I had
speed
that
run
same
is
thought. I
an
thought about
hour
looking it
long. Like it's
Yeah.
you just go through it.
Yeah. So did anyone watch a speedrun?
I watched a few.
I started to.
Were you able to pick up on anything that looked like a trick, or some
No,
sort of
I actually
sequence
watched
break or something?
a tool assisted run, and it's just perfect placement. That's it. There's not like
okay, yeah. So you're
Just
avoiding
knowing
everything.
where everything is coming in. But it was funny to see having 47 health points.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever
exactly.
To,
Oh,
because they
wow.
don't get hit,
Yeah.
right? So they just keep racking
Yeah,
up those
yeah.
health points, and it's just
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I had wondered if there were, I think 9 or so was the most I ever
I
had.
got up to like 12, I think, at one point.
you
Okay.
can get like 50 some, like easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the little dots across the top, and then once you reach the maximum number that they have space for dots, it just becomes like the number after that, which was kind of weird and different.
Whatever works, I guess.
I will say, before we get off this topic, one thing that you would benefit from early, and here's a little pro tip, is just take a little time to familiarize yourself with where Mania's hitbox is, because it's not her head,
Yes.
it's not her legs.
That's
It's
and
a
that's
core.
probably the one thing I would say detracting from the experience is you have your little option thing flying around. You have Maria flying around. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell, where the heck you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But,
And that's some stuff that I noticed in the tool assisted run that he would or not he, but the computer would purposefully go into a position that I was like, oh, he's gonna get hit, but he never does. It's legs, even past your knees going up your thigh. It's still not a hitbox.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I was quite aware of instances of playing it where Maria would be hit. She's invincible. So if you're listening, you haven't played this game, the Mania is the only thing that can get hit and suffer damage. But as you guys are saying, and I wasn't aware of that until now, so that's pretty interesting that the hitbox is kind of center mass.
Yeah, it's really small. And what's funny is after toughing it through the game, not always successfly, but playing through without the 8-way. Once I went back and played 8-way, I was racking up a ton of those hits or lives or whatever throughout, because I was like, oh my god, this game's way easier. Now I understand where the hitbox is, so you can kind of eke your way through small spaces.
Yeah, for that to be the default, that's sort of always pointing right. I just kind of wonder, because there's certain enemy approaches, enemy flight paths, I guess we'll call it, that are, I don't know, just seem designed with you being able to point up or diagonal or down. And it's just fun, and it makes the game so much more fun to me to not go, okay, well, I got to move her around to I guess it's just a different kind of gameplay experience. It becomes more about the shooting and less about the positioning. Which is cool. Because really you can play that 2 different ways, or 3.
And all the long plays I've seen, they're all 2-way. So.
Oh, okay.
It's perfectly okay to do that. And there's a long history of that. I don't know, Section Z and Legendary Wings. They had kind of, I think Abadox as well. You had the shmups that were not really spaceships. They were
Humanoid.
people that were right.
I really like that. There's something about it not being a spaceship, just because I guess I've just played so much, R-Type and Gradius and that sort of thing. The idea of it just feels more like an adventure game to me. and less like a shooter, even though it's quite obviously a shooter.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably connect to the characters more too, and just like the gameplay in general, because you have a character literally shouting every time she gets hit by a bullet. So
right, yeah, with a little cartoon ouch. Yeah.
And if you try to use your special before it's ready,
oh my god, yeah,
charging.
Yeah,
but then it goes
that's
back
the thing
down.
we failed to mention too. There's like a cooldown period for that drone special. I mean, not a massive detail, but and you'll figure it out immediately. But yeah, if you mash that power up or a super attack before that bar has completely filled up, it will deplete, and then it's kind of like I don't know. Normally, that's the kind of thing that I would find unnecessarily punishing in a game, but
I like it
Makes
because
sense.
she kind of complains at you. She's like, charging, come on.
Yeah,
At first, I didn't know you had a bomb button, and then I thought if I held it for a long amount of time, I would charge a shot.
Yeah, because when it said
Gotcha.
charging, I was like, oh, I'll hold it down so it charges.
Yeah, and then nothing would
it's just
happen. I was
time,
like, oh,
yeah.
God, okay, fine.
That's one of those things you clear up in the first level.
Yeah. First 15 minutes, I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, unless there's anything else.
I have one quick shame, just to shame myself further, because that's what I've been doing for a lot of this. So this we've talked about a bunch, the stage where you're on top of the car and you shoot, and there's that big semi or whatever behind you. So the whole time, I'm shooting. I'm basically just moving backwards or towards the right, so enemies will get in front of me, so I can shoot them. Right. And the whole time, and then when you get to the end of the stage, there's kind of a boss where you have to hit this orb that's up high. And the whole time I was like, maybe this is, and you're also dodging stuff like a laser and other things. And I was like, maybe I just have to wait this boss out. And this is like one of those just dodge exercises. I didn't know you could shoot up until I finally tried it. I was like, oh my God.
Must have been a long boss fight.
Wait,
Yes.
So you were playing 8-way at that
No,
point?
no,
Yeah,
I was playing,
that level
okay,
you can play.
so-
That level you can shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just automatically corrects it.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the only level that you can play 8-way if you have 1-way turned on.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's no other way to do it based on the fact that you're in a sort of a fixed
We didn't talk about it much, but I really enjoyed the like horror house level. I don't know if you guys remember that one. It's like a bunch of demons and like everything is kind of
oh yeah, sure.
rotting.
That's like the very very last.
Yeah, it's
thing,
like
right?
It's really close to the
rotting
end, yeah.
stuff. And then like
There's
they're
like zombie
throwing
kind of creatures.
zombie babies and like
Yeah.
And the music is super dark.
Yeah.
That's a good
And there's, like,
example of a stage.
Oni masks in the background and like I don't know. I felt that aesthetic was really really cool.
The color palette on that stage really stands out
Yeah, it's
too. Like lots of black and then like purple and blue,
Purple, red, and the spikes.
yeah, red.
Yeah, that's really hard to pull off. It was almost like like a horror manga aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
Totally.
And what about the last boss? The favorite of the Japanese, giant enemy crab.
Yes.
That's right.
So
yeah, that's a good one too because it's satisfying because when you're fighting that guy, he's got the pincher claw, the great big claws in the front, got the little ones on the side, and they all light up individually as you shoot them. And I don't know, I just like that. It wasn't just a weak spot. And it wasn't just the whole thing lights
Sure.
up.
Yeah, you have to go one by one.
Yeah. It gives you something to do,
Yeah.
And then it's got a couple of cool attacks that.
Did-
come with it.
It's like those bosses in Contra where you pick off parts.
Yeah.
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 I'm
Did anyone else
looking
feel like
at
they just made the last boss like satisfying and not difficult, just like almost
Oh yeah,
cathartic?
totally not.
Yeah,
Difficult.
totally. Yeah, it wasn't that tough.
No, he doesn't really throw that much at you. You just got to move around.
Yep. Yeah, it's just about wearing him down.
Before the big boss fight, story wise, he reveals that he'll show you his face, and then he rips off his mask, and he's blonde. And I'm wondering if he's related.
He's like this beautiful blonde guy.
I'm wondering if he's related
Although,
to Mania at all.
I don't know.
He looks kind of like her, so
Yeah, maybe it's like a brother. That's why he wants her brain.
they definitely didn't explore that.
Maybe in Battlemania 3 on the PS1.
That's now a big. I wish they had explored that further and continued with the series.
If you remind me to put in the show notes that link, because there's some images, like I guess like renderings and things that they had done, and it was supposed to be fully in 3D, but the game was going to have top down mode, a side scrolling mode, and then like a 3D, like a full 3D mode, kind of
Like Space Harrier.
Yeah, Space Harrier. That's what I was thinking of. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but with the that time frame, the 3D rendering,
Would have been kind of
I don't
poopy.
know, man.
Yeah.
Might have looked pretty rough, especially how beautiful this game
Would have
is.
been dodgy.
It would have been awesome
Yeah,
to do
so-
like a pixel version, like just an updated pixel version of that game.
Oh yeah. Well, like I mean, if you want to talk about that time frame of Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, or whatever, we totally could have got a sprite art kind of a Symphony of the Night, something of that
exactly
of that quality,
2.5D kind of pseudo.
Yeah,
that would have been great.
All right, so we're at the point in the show where it's time to kind of nail down a summary of our final thoughts. So, as we have been doing, I'd like to do a round robin with each of you guys to share with me one thing you thought was really excellent about the game and one thing that was maybe not so great that could use a little work. So let's start with Brian, please.
Okay, well, I thought that game's beautifully drawn, had just great characterizations and art and everything. My complaints really aren't unique to this. It's more unique to shmups, where you really kind of have to memorize the levels. But I would say in general, it is kind of more casual as far as shmups go. I would give it a good 3 out of 5 lovely angels.
Nice. All right, Frank, how about you?
I'm gonna go for the worst first, where I really wish it was continues. For the first,
well, there are continues.
Well, there's health
lives. You want lives, I think.
No, you have continues when you die.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't have infinite continues.
Yeah, your health depletes, and then you get 5 continues.
Really? I didn't know that. Because every time I died, I went back to the splash screen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Huh.
I don't know why. Anyways, but for me,
bad hack.
For whatever ROM hack that I had, I just needed to have that extra, like, at the start, because after you play it a while, like Brian said, you get used to the level, you get used to the enemy placements, and you just go through it. You don't die. But the first 2 hours, I'm like, oh my god, I keep dying. I have to restart level 1 and 2 and 3, and so on and so forth. So that's my gripe about it. But I guess the best thing, I'm gonna go with music, because I know you guys are gonna say music again, but the music is really good. Like it's pretty much what makes the game, in my opinion.
For sure.
If I want to jump on the difficulty really quick, my wife was asking me, is this harder or easier than Pocky and Rocky? I'm like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know.
That's a tough call.
I think it's easier.
Pocky and Rocky is not super hard.
It has its moments.
I would say that I had a harder time with Battle Mania Daiginjou from the get-go. Whereas there was spots later on in Pocky and Rocky that were more frustrating than this game was. Also, I played this game on easy, so maybe it might not be a fair comparison, as Pocky and Rocky didn't really have that option. But, I don't know. It's tough to say.
There's more going on, but you could also dodge better in Battle Mania. So
yeah, the controls are way better than Pocky and Rocky.
Right.
So.
Oh, and I'm also going to give it 4 shank yous out of 5.
Nice. Wow, that's a high. Are you sure about that number? That's a high ranking.
It is a high, because it's even though it's hard, that's just my fault. But everything else is great.
Hashtag get good.
I just need to get good at the game. But otherwise, everything else is good. Like, pixel art is good, controls are good, music is
memorized.
Good, game level design is good. Like, there's nothing really bad about this game.
Yeah. All right, last of the 3. Joseph, what do you got?
Well, so the music is a no-brainer. Loved it, but I also really love the sheer variety, from the levels and enemies to the zaniness of the bosses and just the overall buck wild tone of the game.
Yeah.
That's my top favorite thing about this. It was just, like I said earlier, it's just I love not knowing what's going to happen next and that driving me to play.
For sure.
As far as
how about something that maybe didn't work out?
I don't like when a better way of playing a game is buried in menus. Because I often consider the default options to be the developer's intended way of playing. So I don't know. I just feel like I would have liked that presented to me maybe on a title screen, even.
Totally. I wonder. We can sit around and speculate forever about like why that would be. I mean, because the standard horizontal shmup is, typically in that direction, and they wanted to make it familiar. But yeah, I would argue that that's the developers' intended method.
Yeah, because they have enemies coming at you at all angles. Like 8 ways the only way. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, for rating, I would give this 4 out of 5 jetpack joyrides.
Nice. Well, I guess that's my turn. I mean, the music, obviously I gushed over it for far too long. And like I said, it's my new favorite Sega Genesis soundtrack. It's not too often at this stage in the game where you can like discover something new and then say, this is now my new favorite thing. This is better than other things, Yeah. You've kind of just already figured that out. So yeah, soundtrack, but in addition to that, I think like just the contrast of that humor and then the serious and the monstrous and action packed, like it does everything so well, in that regard. Complaints, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of with Joseph. That's like such a slight nitpick for an otherwise great game is like, why is this thing not set up the best way from the get-go? And it might be a little bit tough. I don't know. I'm going to take a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. Like Frank's right. The difficulty is a little bit much from the start, and it would be nice to have some extra lives or continues to kind of work with. And then, the buried mechanics. So, but I love the game. And I'm on the fence about this number, guys. I'm just going to do it because I had such a fun experience with it. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 brain-powered battle tanks. Nice. So that's our first 4.5. I love this game. I love shooters. I have fond memories of playing them as a kid. My wife and I still to this day enjoy playing them together. So it's good fun, and this is just a gem, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So it ain't perfect, but it's about as close as you're going to get. So. All right. So with everything said about Mania Daiginjou, aka Troubleshooter 2, if you haven't played it yet and you want to get your hands on it, as per usual, we got good news and bad news. The good news is that you can get your ROMs aplenty, and your morals should hopefully not come into question. This game was never released outside of Japan and South Korea. And any way that you're going to go about obtaining it is probably going to be your only option, because if you buy a legit copy of this game, if you get it loose, well, actually, I don't have the loose price here in front of me. What I do have is the price in general to get this right now, and I assume it's in the box because that's kind of, I don't think there's a lot of Sega Genesis games or Mega Drive in this case floating around in the wild without a box. But I could be wrong about that. But nevertheless, $450 was the cheapest I could find this game, and $800 seemed to be the high end for like a perfect mint version. If you're an original hardware guy and you want to get a repro of this, you're actually in real good shape. You can get just a repro cart of this game. And it's definitely a repro. I mean, I looked at a bunch of different listings on eBay and various on the sites online, and it's got like a notch cut out of it. They're not messing around. They're not trying to fool anybody. But you can get that for $12, which is nothing. I mean, I highly recommend buying this game. And you can get a repro with a nice original box. And what's cool too is like the box in Japan, obviously had Japanese, text on it. But people have gone through the trouble to like make box art for this as though it were released over here and call it Troubleshooter 2 and like do the whole thing. Awesome. And you can get that for $35. So
I kind of want to get that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's worth having. And if you've got a Genesis right now, I mean, obviously I love the game, so I would recommend it. But without further ado, it is now time to announce next episode's game. And if I'm not mistaken, this selection falls to Joseph.
It's me, dog.
Joe, what do you got, bro?
I have chosen Kid Dracula for Game Boy.
Ooh.
All right. Well, without further ado, I'd say it's time for
Doki Doki Power Ride.
That's right, it's Doki Doki Powerline, where we plug you into the source for the hottest gamer tips and tricks. The winner of this episode's Powerline Pro Tip comes from Colonel Patch?
Whoa.
Wow, the actual Colonel Patch from Battle Mania Daiginjou. So he's taken time out of his busy career of being a military person to write in, and he says, in the options menu, you select the BGM setting and change the entry to silence. From there, press the A button 4 times and change the entry to Nothing 13. After that, press the A button 3 times. From there, you start a new game and the stage select menu will appear. So you can hop around to your heart's
content.
That's cool.
Actually, I actually might use that.
I didn't know that. Yeah. That's awesome.
And that concludes episode 6 of Doki Doki Game Club. Before we mow down on some tasty Japanese treats, I want to thank my trio of troubleshooters for joining me today. Who are you guys, and where can people find you? Let's start with Brian.
Yes, I'm Brian Grogan. You can find me on Twitter at KenOShinobi.
And how about you, Mr. Frank?
Frank Martin. You can find me on Twitter at Hios_IO and on Twitch, Hios_.
And last but not least, Mr. Joseph.
And I've got like a wall of text here. No, my name's Joseph Lester. You can find me on Twitter at Moldilux, MOLDILOX. And my website is subhumanzoids.com. And that's where you'll find my comic, Big Dumb Fighting Idiots, and other thrilling content. And I also have a bi-weekly-ish podcast with my friend Kanan called Subhuman Cast. And our next episode will be a spoiler-loaded chat about The Last Jedi.
Ooh.
If you are interested in stalking me in a cyber stalker capacity, you can find me on Twitter. I go under the handle Genocide. That's DJINNOCIDE. And if you'd like to follow the show on Twitter, we're there at Doki Doki GC. In addition to that, we're practically on every other social media network. So you can Google search for us online, or you can head over to dokidokigameclub.com for further details. And last but not least, we have a Patreon. So if you have a couple of bucks you can spare and you'd like to show us your support in that manner, you can head on over to patreon.com/Doki Doki Game Club, where we have some pretty neat rewards available to anyone interested in supporting us in that fashion. So, on behalf of Brian, Frank, Joseph, and myself, thanks for listening, and until next time, adios, Battletoads.